in small businesses. We need to encourage people who have postdoctorate degrees to be able to go out and create their companies, take all the education they've learned, innovative new ideas that we've paid for with research and development, and create companies. And here's why. Because that creates jobs for our recent college graduates. Because when you invest in small businesses, what we've learned the last 15 years, 64% of job creation has come from small businesses. So if we're not investing in small businesses, we're not creating jobs, and we won't have the jobs for our wonderfully young college graduates.
The next question is to Ms. Estee.
Oh, I didn't get to respond on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, and then you'll have the next one after that.
First, I think we need to look at loan forgiveness programs. One of the fastest ways we can make sure that people educated in our state stay in our state is to be more creative. Let's do loan forgiveness. I've worked with businesses. I think if we set up to have apprenticeship programs where people work during college and have a job waiting for them. The truth is Germany has been doing this for years. Sometimes we've got to look beyond our borders to look for good models that are actually working. This is something we can do, particularly in the fields of technology and manufacturing. And we can also work better with our community colleges to coordinate and plan for skill development. Thank you.
Well, let's keep on rolling. Ms. Estee, the U.S. Supreme Court has decided to hear a reverse discrimination case brought by a white applicant against the University of Texas at Austin. The applicant claimed she was denied admission because she's white. If the U.S. Supreme Court finds for the plaintiff and overturns affirmative action, what impact would this have on your agenda and priorities in Congress?
Well, it's a really important question, and we wrestled this in law school. I have to say for me that was in the 1980s. We are not the best country we could be yet. There is still discrimination out there, and anybody who has knocked the kind of doors that I've knocked. In 2010, I have to say, when I went to doors with some of the young people here, some of the comments that were made about our president would make your hair stand on end. And nobody here should think that we are race blind in this country. We are not. So we have a lot of work to do. I wish we were, but we're not there yet. And we are committed to real opportunity. And real opportunity means recognizing the reality of where people come from and how others are going to treat them. And I think it is incredibly important. It's actually vital to what we mean as American people to make opportunity real for everyone. And that means recognizing that we are not yet there. We are not colorblind. We do need to judge people by what they do. But we have a long way to go. And if you look at the data, and folks in this room have, we need to take into account making that possible for all people. And with kids in college, I know that remains a problem, not just financing, but in fact having doors open. And we need to all commit in our classrooms, in our businesses, in our campaigns to do better. Thank you.
You know, Martin Luther King worked hard to make sure that our country respected everybody. He died for that. And he taught us all that we need to treat everybody with dignity and respect. Everybody. That means opportunity for everybody. And we've made some progress. We've made a lot of progress. We have a diverse community. Colleges need a diverse community. We need to make sure everybody has the opportunities in our country. And we'll work hard to continue to work on Martin Luther King Street. Thank you.
We are a country constantly learning, growing, moving towards the future. And we have many, many civil rights battles ahead of us. And we need to make sure we don't ever take steps backwards. We need to make sure we are always working towards a place where people are judged, as Martin Luther King said, by the content of who they are, not by the color of their skin. And we need to work together, nonstop, and keep moving towards a more freer nation. We have to do it. It's what makes us Americans.
Thank you. Well, the next question is about health care. And Mr. Roberti will take that question first. With recent policy decisions providing contraception for workers associated with religious institutions, what resolution would you provide that balances religious rights and women's rights? Do you support a woman's right to obtain contraceptives and reproductive medical care?
I do, and I support specifically President Obama's compromise on this very issue. And this goes beyond just the issue that's been in the news lately. This started a year ago when the Republicans held up the budget process over their ideology. And they started the culture wars up all over again, things that we thought were settled long ago and should have been. And they brought it back into political dialogue, and they started waging a war on women's health care. And this is something we cannot go down this path again. This is one reason why it's so important to protect this 5th district seat, because we have to take back the House. Because as Chris Murphy, our current representative, will tell you, when he sat in the committee with Chairman Issa, who refused to let a single woman sit on the committee to testify about women's health care. I mean, that just sounds completely insane to me. And Congressman Murphy went on record multiple times, and Chairman Issa refused to let it happen. We are in the midst of going backwards right now. So we have to protect this seat. We need to make sure we continue to send Democrats down to Washington who will stand up for women's rights. We have to do this. It's just, we can't go back to the 60s. We know this here in Connecticut. We know how it is. The law was forged here.
Thank you very much.
In my high school in the 1970s, 3 or 4 girls dropped out every year. They didn't graduate. They didn't have any access to birth control. So when I got to college, one of the first things I did was go down to the local Planned Parenthood office in Boston and said, how can I help? Now I'm sitting here at 52. I've got 3 kids of my own, one of them grown, and there's no right that's more fundamental than controlling for yourself and your family, making those decisions about when or whether to have children. I have been active on this for 30 years, 40 years. There's nobody who's going to be a stronger voice in Washington.
You know, President Obama promises health care for everyone, and that includes everyone. And so he did the right thing by making sure that insurance companies cover contraception for women. We need to do more. Being a woman shouldn't be a pre-existing condition. Finally, the cost of women's health care is being reduced because of the Affordable Health Care Act. In the state, I worked to make sure contraception was covered by insurance companies, and also negotiated with the Catholic Church to make sure women who are raped get the care they need.
Have about 4 or 5 more of the formal questions, and then after that we're going to go to our wild card round, and we'll see what you came up with. So if anybody would like to put in a last-minute question, please do. Mr. Donovan, in the last Congress, Representatives Barney Frank and Ron Paul introduced H.R. 2306, which would end the federal prohibition against marijuana, thereby allowing individual states to determine their own marijuana policies in accordance with their citizens' wishes. To date, this bill has been co-sponsored by 20 members of the House. If elected, will you co-sponsor this bill?
Well, the answer is yes. It's simply this. In Connecticut, we've worked on the issue of, first of all, legalization of marijuana, medical use of marijuana, and decriminalization of marijuana. And the impact that has not only on society and the people in our families, but also on the courts and the jails. And what we've determined that there is a real drain on the enforcement of our drug laws dealing with marijuana. Last year, we passed a bill that decriminalizes the use of marijuana. We passed that. So in Connecticut, if someone gets caught with some marijuana on them, the cops will issue them a traffic ticket. No more court appearances, no more going to jail, no more using lawyers, reducing the costs in our prisons. This year, I believe we're going to deal with the issue of medical marijuana, to make sure that people who need marijuana to help them through the diseases they have, whether it's pain management or appetite, that they can have access to marijuana when prescribed by their doctors. Certainly, we have a history of fighting marijuana as a drug in our country. And it has drawn too much of our resources, whether it be prison or courts, and neglected, it has hurt our police enforcement to deal with the really tough issues out there in the real economy. We need to move away from that and decriminalize marijuana like we did here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Well, the big issue here is how the federal government is going to interact with states who've made decisions. The state of Connecticut made a decision to decriminalize. Other states made a decision to legalize medical marijuana. Let's look at the medical marijuana situation. What happens if you're in a state and it says you are legally allowed to do this, and now the federal government's going to waste resources coming in to try to prosecute you? We can't have that happen. We're in a deficit situation right now. We can't be wasting resources funding legal battles in states that have already made up their minds.
Thank you. Ms. Esty.
As we're hearing, it has both aspects of does it make sense from a security point of view of what we mean for public safety, and does this make sense between the states and the federal government? And frankly, in both cases, decriminalization is going to make more sense. It is just taking too many resources. We have major strains on our budget, and we need to free up our police to focus on essential criminals who are going after us in our personal safety. It has been a distraction to focus on marijuana, and we need to cut the states the slack to make decisions for themselves.
Okay, thank you. I want to now turn to super PACs. And Ms. Esty, this question goes to you. Super PACs have largely taken the place of individual donors in this year's election cycle, and there doesn't really seem to be any boundaries on what they are allowed to do. What do you support doing regarding these federal super PACs?
Well, I think what's very clear is that the Supreme Court, number one, in Citizens United was just wrong as a matter of law. And if anybody needs an argument to vote for Obama, is we have to change the Supreme Court and get rid of Citizens United. It's bad and it's wrong. But also Citizens United said, we're going to have transparency. We're going to know who's giving the money. But guess what? Guess what? The lobbyists and the insiders, they found a way around that. And we have no idea who's giving the money. We have no idea who's pulling the strings. And that is wrong. I actually think we need to go back to making people put their name and their face to an ad. Fine, if the Koch brothers want to run an ad, fine. Let them put their name behind it. If a company wants to run an ad, let their CEO stand up and say, I support this for evil corporation. You know, it does not make sense. And we have to shine a bright light on how this money is getting raised and how it's getting spent. Because it is a cancer on body politic. It is destroying faith in this country, and it is the biggest single challenge we face right now. We have got to stop the corruption of the money. Thank you.
Mr. Donovan.
We have to re-elect Obama and get new judges. We could also start a constitutional amendment to change the decision, but also we can fight back by having a clean election law like we have in Connecticut with public dollars funding matching dollars that candidates raise. In Connecticut, as a state rep, you raise $5,000, the state will give you another $25,000 to run it as a state rep, get the money out of politics. In the state of Connecticut, you raise $250,000 in small donations. The state will give you $6 million to run for governor. Anybody can run for governor in Connecticut. Anybody can run for state representative. We need to take that fight down to Washington and have publicly financed elections in Washington.
first question. Oh, I'm sorry. Wow.
It gets confusing.
Thanks for waking me up. Please.
Well, and it's very quick. Citizens United is the worst Supreme Court decision since Bush v. Gore. It's unfathomable. And let me tell you how we need to change this. Re-elect President Obama. You know why? Because that's the direct way to make sure we break up this Supreme Court right now that is tilted 5-4 in a horrible way. They talked about activist judiciary. Well, they are the most activist court we have had in ages. So we need to overturn this decision. It must happen for our future.
Thank you. All right. Now, we will go to Mr. Donovan, I believe. Is that right? Oh, thanks for the help. And we're talking about national security. What is your position on Iran and its nuclear aspirations, peaceful or otherwise?
First of all, Iran cannot develop a nuclear weapon, first and foremost. We have to do whatever we can to stop it. I support President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in their work with our allies to put sanctions on Iran, to let them know, in no uncertain terms, that we will not let them develop that nuclear weapon. It's starting to have an effect. I read in the paper where Iran has said, you know, we're open to further negotiations, and some of the preconditions that we put on the table, now we're moving on. They're feeling it. The businesses are feeling it. The community is feeling the sanctions, what is happening to them. They need to sell their oil, and Europe, our allies, are saying, we're not buying. We need to keep pressure on them. We have to protect our ally in the area, our good friend and democracy, Israel. We need to make sure that they're not under attack. So we have to use everything we can to put pressure on Iran. And I think the negotiations are tricky. You can't push them so far in a corner that they retaliate by war developing the weapon. We have to put pressure on them. Economic pressure, diplomatic pressure, and some threats to what they might do. And I believe we need to work for peace in the area. That area's been under a lot of turmoil. We're in it. We're coming out of Iraq. We're coming out of Afghanistan. We need to use our pressure right now to stop it from developing.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan.
First and foremost, we need to continue with the sanctions. I would have supported the Threat Reduction Act. I would support, most likely, any sanctions that bring the international community together to try and reduce this threat. Iran cannot get their hands on nuclear weapons. It's fundamentally important to the stability of the region. And we also apply this. We also need to pay close attention to what's going on in Syria right now. Because if the Assad regime falls and democracy can reign there, that would be something unbelievable for the region. Because Syria is Iran's linchpin ally right now.
Thank you very much. Ms. Esty.
A nuclearized Iran is entirely unacceptable. And it's not just unacceptable to us, but to all of the neighbors. It's clear from WikiLeaks last year that all of the Arab neighbors are frightened, quaking in their boots about the prospect of the madmen in Iran having nuclear weapons. We need to use that. We need to force everyone in the region to join hands around this. The sanctions are really having some effect, but we need to keep the pressure on. We also need to talk tough with China and Russia, which have let them get away with way too much, and we need to apply pressure to them as well. It's unacceptable for us, it's unacceptable for Israel, and it's unacceptable for world peace. Thank you.
Thank you.